Hey, Dream 10X, it's your boy JC.
And Dr. Cable.
And welcome to episode 50 of the Dream 10X podcast. And guess what? Episode 50 is coming out on our 2-year anniversary of the podcast. We've been doing this for 2 years.
That's amazing.
We thought we could do 52 episodes in 1 year, but things expand and take longer than you expect. Mm-hmm. Speaking of taking longer than you expect, I'm trying to release our new software product, Nautilus Tracker. Hopefully, it'll be coming out in the next couple of days to week. 2 week, that's the goal. So I'm very excited to be getting that out. I also just finished my first master's program class in computer science at Georgia Tech, and hopefully I passed. I'm going to find out in a day or two if I passed. If not, then I don't have to worry about taking your classes. It's so much work. It's a lot of work, school, man.
Tell me about
Plus,
it.
you gotta get a B or better. Like, what's that? I don't even know what it's like to get B's and A's. So, anyway, a lot going on. We just got off the water. We row every morning, and so you're getting ready for something big next week.
Oh yeah, Masters Nationals rowing. So it's Masters Nationals. There's people all over the U.S. and we come to Florida and we race all weekend or all week actually. So it's going to be fun and exhausting.
What are you rowing in?
All fours, a couple of mixed fours. So fours are 4 people in a boat, 1 oar each.
Sweet.
Yep. And the mixed 4 means there's 2 men, 2 women. And then, so I'm in 1 mixed 4, and I think the rest are all women. So.
And?
Oh, so I'm stroking my first race, and my coach is in the boat, so no pressure. And I'm not very good at starts as a stroke, so it's going to be quite an interesting experience.
Best of luck to you.
Thank
Hope
you.
you have fun. Down in Florida racing. It's going to be a lot of fun. This episode, we are talking about the book, The Founders, and I'm going to talk about 5 things I took away from this book real quick. This book is about PayPal and the mix of personalities that all collided there in San Jose to create this wonderful company. And if you follow the markets at all, this past week you'll have heard that PayPal was one of the big drivers pushing the NASDAQ up this week. So it's really fascinating to hear that in the context of this book and realizing how that big company started with just small, tiny movements in totally odd, random directions. And those movements finally coalesced with a tremendous brain power and created this behemoth that now is a huge force driving the NASDAQ. It's really fascinating. So the first thing that I took away from this book is that Max Levchin, a Ukrainian immigrant to the United States, was actually the core guy, the main driver behind the creation of PayPal. And I had always thought PayPal was like a Peter Thiel, Elon Musk thing. But Max Levchin was really the guy who got it all started.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So Max was Ukrainian, and he immigrated to the United States with his family. His family were physicists, and they were running away from an oppressive government, Russian government, I believe. They ended up coming to Chicago, which is also interesting in light of our review of Sam Zell's book, Am I Being Too Subtle? Yeah. Because remember, in that episode 47, we talked about how his family fled from Poland and came to Chicago.
Because Chicago's awesome.
Yeah, so some people think Chicago is awesome, yeah. But so Max's family came to Chicago, and they were poor, just like Sam Zell's family did. And they sold their clothes as soon as they got there to get some money to help them bootstrap their living there. And eventually, Max ended up going to the University of Illinois, Chicago, Urbana campus. And he studied computer science there. And this was in the early 90s. I think 91 is when their family came to the United States. And so soon thereafter, he went to college there. Graduated from college with a master's a bachelor's in computer science. Starts a company called FieldLink. And that company was mainly concerned with Palm security consulting. I think consulting in products, trying to improve the security of the Palm operating system. So he goes to San Jose and he's trying to be a founder and starting this little company, FieldLink. And then he ends up running into Peter Thiel, and then the rest is history, and they end up creating PayPal. And it's a great story how that all happened. So that's just a little background on Max Levchin. Now he's a multi-billionaire. He's running another company called Affinity, and really fascinating character. It was really interesting to learn that he is the core guy behind PayPal.
Wow.
So my number two takeaway was about Elon Musk. And I was curious how he got his start, and they talk a little bit about it in this book. It starts with Zip2. I think there's some interesting stories about Elon Musk before Zip2, but it was interesting to hear how Zip2 was really the company that sprung his wealth or whatever. That's where he got the most money.
What was Zip2?
Initially.
What was that company?
Zip2 sold. It was kind of ambiguous. I'm not really sure what it was, and I never saw it. But it's some map-based thing where they sold location-based information to various newspapers and stuff through a map interface or something like that. I don't
Interesting.
know.
Okay.
It's called Zip2. The other interesting thing about Zip2 is even though Elon was the founder, he ended up not being a major contributor. I guess the leadership of the company kind of pushed him out a little bit. And anyway, they ended up selling the company to Compaq for $307 million in cash.
Wow.
And this is in the 90s, like
Okay.
mid to late 90s. And but Elon was the one who really started that company.
Yeah.
And he said, he's got a funny quote in the book. He says, "My bank account went from like $5,000 to $21,005,000. He just got a check from Compaq. You know.
Oh, that's amazing.
The other interesting thing is they sold for $307 million in cash, and he only walks away with $21 million. So I mean, only that's
only.
how old was he? He was 27 years old.
Oh no.
27.
I can imagine me at 27 with that money.
Oh man, I just can only dream about that. But
Amazing.
there's a cool video online about him Elon taking taking delivery of his F1 McLaren that he bought right after he got that big chunk of
McLarens.
money, and he's with his girlfriend, and he's top of the world. So that's kind of cool. You know, it must be a really great feeling to make that kind of money. But 21 million cash. So from 307 million. So he gave away a lot of equity in his company, even though he started it. So I think that's an interesting takeaway. And there's nothing wrong with $21 million. You know, so I thought that was really cool. Wish I could go on such a journey. Okay, relentlessly pivot. That's another key takeaway I took away from how Max Levchin pivoted his business into what ultimately became PayPal. I mean, when you think about how Levchin started the whole thing, started out as a Palm Pilot company, and they were doing Palm security.
Palm has come up a lot throughout our podcast.
Yeah, in fact, we reviewed Jeff Hawkins' book on intelligence. And of course, Jeff Hawkins is the founder of is founder of Palm. Mm-hmm. And so here we are reading about Jeff Hawkins again, and in this book by Jimmy Soni, Levchin started working with Palm, interested in improving Palm security, and to that end, he goes to a 3Com conference in San Jose one weekend or 1 week or whatever, and pretends he needs a ride home.
Oh no.
And so he waits for Jeff Hawkins, who was giving a keynote at the conference, to come out, and so he could ask him for a ride home. And so Hawkins offers him a ride.
Wow! Can you imagine?
He gets in the car with him, and they're driving along, and then at some point Hawkins realizes, hey, I'm not taking this guy home. He's up to something else. And so he says, why don't you just go ahead and tell me what you're trying to get out of me? And Levchin says, well, I'd really love to know the direction that Palm is going in improving the security of Palm OS. Because that's really what he wanted to learn to help the direction of his own company that he was working on. And so Hawkins says, well, we've already gone with Certicom. Certicom is another company that was providing libraries that elliptical curve and other types of cryptography libraries to help improve security there. And so that was key intel that Levchin was able to take away from that ride home,
Yeah.
with Jeff Hawkins. So
That's
anyway,
brave.
what was I talking about? Pivot. So Palm Pilots, that's where it was focused. They moved away from security a little bit more towards beaming money from the IR port of a Palm Pilot. I don't know if you remember. Did you ever have a Palm Pilot? You don't even know what I'm talking about. It's old tech, but it was cool tech. And they had these little IR ports in the front of them.
Is that like when I hold my cell phone up to another cell phone and then
Yeah, but these had like little IR ports, and so they would shoot infrared beams that contained data.
Oh, that's cool.
And they could exchange data between the Palm Pilots. And I don't know why they don't. I guess they were kind of buggy at the time, but it was kind of cool. And nerds really liked developing stuff with that. And Levchin was one of those. And it was a really cool platform for nerds and geeks to play around with. So geeks really love to hack on Palms and create cool implementations.
Nerds and geeks, I'm sure.
And the IR port was one really cool thing. Like I remember you could play Pong on between two people holding Palm devices over the IR port. Because it didn't really have any other networking really at the time, and so that was anyway.
Yeah, that's neat.
So beaming money over the IR port was one direction that Levchin was taking with the company when he ran into Peter Thiel, and so that genesis of the technology at the time helped get a lot of VC money in their company, and so that's what kept them alive and moving. And then. As they got the VC money, they started hiring more people and more brains started coming on. These big brains were like, beaming money over IR. Not many people use Palm. It's not going to be that big. We should probably go with sending money over email. And so then they pivoted ultimately in that direction. I think it took a long time for Levchin to make that pivot, but the company as a whole had pivoted to that, which is also kind of interesting. It's hard to let go of the technology that you developed, even though maybe the money is in another direction.
Yeah.
So they eventually moved to sending money over email, and then X.com came along, and the whole story's in here. It's just really fascinating. But this was the genesis of PayPal because it started from Palm Mobile Computing, and they hired a consulting company at the time to help them come up with a name. So the name of the company went from FieldLink to Confinity, but they didn't think Confinity really fit the product name, the software product name. So they hired a consulting company to come in and say, "Hey, can you help us come up with a more palatable name for our software product?" And so they hired Master McNeil, and some of the names that they came up with for the software product was eMoneyBeam, which is kind of cool. Zappio. That's Momo.
No.
Will you text me some Momos? Cache and PayPal. PayPal was the name of the company that stuck, or the name of the product that stuck, and that eventually became the company name, and the rest is history. And so that's in a nutshell, how they pivoted to get to this huge behemoth that is now PayPal. It's really, really cool story. All right, relentlessly pivot, how PayPal got its name, and then finally, my other takeaway from this was the influence of Nebraska in terms of customer service. So you lived in Nebraska for a while.
I did. I loved it there. And PayPal, actually, that was the first time I ever heard of PayPal. And in Omaha, they had a huge building. It was down the street from where my office was. And we stole a lot of their customer service reps to come to our company. And vice versa, when people would leave, which was very rare, they would go to PayPal. So,
do you have any insight as to why Nebraskans are so good at customer service?
They are the nicest people.
Nice,
just very kind, very nice, very generous, warm and welcoming. I loved living there.
So X.com and Confinity were kind of working together. They eventually merged to form the core of PayPal. But at the time, they were having a lot of customer service problems. They were behind on all the emails that they were trying to get through, and they were working with a Californian company to do the customer support, and so it was expensive, and they weren't getting through the backlog. And so one employee of X.com, Julie Anderson, told Elon, hey, I've got a sister in Nebraska, a lot of family and a lot of friends who might be willing to take on customer support. And I think they could do it a lot better and it'd be a lot friendlier and we'd be a lot more efficient. And Elon says, here's a blank check, go to Nebraska and make it happen. And so Julie Anderson hires her sister, Jill Harriman, and they form a huge customer support center there in Nebraska. And they crush it and they get through all of the backlog of emails and they just do great. And everybody loves customer support in Nebraska. And it was a core... a central reason why PayPal was so successful in its early days because of customer support, customer-centric support. And that's very important for a company is to have strong customer support ethics or what's the word? Strong customer support culture.
Outward mindset culture.
Yeah. So, and those are my top takeaways from this book. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. And you can find us on the web at dream10x.com. Where else? Podcast. Dream10x.com. Apple, iTunes, YouTube. Android, YouTube, Dream10x on YouTube. And Alexa, we have an Alexa app. You can tune in on the Alexa app too and listen from there. You have a voice user interface. You can talk to her. You want to like talking to your machines, I know, but...
Yeah, it's cool because you can ask for keywords like, Alexa, tell me all the episodes with AI or
Try it out. Let us know. And look for us at nautilustracker.com in the coming weeks. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks with the episode 51.
Bye.
Peace.